want to thank you all for joining us. We're waiting a little bit as Todd gets set up. We're going to be, my plan is that we're going to have Todd give a little talk about what the port is setting up at the Marine Technical Center and the Makerspace plans that they have. And then we can have some Q&A with Todd. And then if there's enough people, we can break up into smaller groups so that people can interact and just have some discussion, get to know each other a little bit so that we can maybe start getting some ideas about how to move forward with building a system of makerspaces that works across our geographically separated islands. Todd, are you about ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, well, without further ado, thank you so much for coming to speak with us, Todd, and good to go.
Okay, I'll just take it away. So I know many of you, but for those of you that I don't, I'm Todd Nicholson. I'm the Executive Director of the Port of Friday Harbor. One of our primary missions is economic development, and that fits really well into the makerspace conversation. So what we've been working on for the last couple of years, and it's kind of all coming together now. First, we purchased Jensen's Marina with the idea that we were going to create a small makerspace economic development area. But then shortly after that, we purchased Shipyard Cove Marina, which gave us a substantial upland and water presence. And so we on our website, you can find a master plan that shows how that whole facility fits together. But what I wanted to talk about today is on the easterly edge of the Shipyard Cove Jensen's complex, there's a space that was dedicated towards this Marine Technical Center. And so this Marine Technical Center is going to be a 15,000 square foot plus building. So it's a large space. And within the space, the lower level, and here, let me scroll down on the screen here. I'll show you so this is in the upper right-hand corner. This is the edge of Jensen. So this is kind of, you're looking at where the makerspace building would be here. These are sort of the architectural, these are the aesthetic that we're going for, something that fits into the old system. It'll obviously be a new building, but the idea is to make it look like it belongs. And let's see, let me drop down to option C, which is where we're at. All right, so let's see. This is probably the best look right now. So the building itself is envisioned for a full lower story. This is a 12-foot tall ceiling, concrete floor, garage bay accesses. There'll be vehicular access on this side of the building around the front for getting materials in and out. And so the primary makerspace is this lower level, and that's about 7,500 to 8,000 square feet. Additionally, this section over here is going to be the IOSA headquarters, but this section in here will probably go up to a 1.5 story with about 3,500 square foot on the bottom and another maybe 2,000 foot of mezzanine space above it, with an attached atrium for a variety of different purposes. So at this point, we have no plans. We don't have any tenants or identified. We have types of businesses that we're looking at. And then additionally, in this space, we have some conceptual types of things that kind of might fit into the makerspace. So what I wanted to do in this conversation is start bouncing around some ideas of individual tenants or business types, but additionally, some more partnership type ideas where there might be STEM / EDC worker training / reusing island products kind of businesses, or like some joint use community workshop space, those types of ideas. We'd have to come up with a business model that made that work, but those are all on the table. So so that's sort of the large scale picture. And I wasn't going to spend a bunch of more time trying to, independently just me talking about vision. What I'd really love to do is open it up to question and answers and let you guys kind of guide the rest of the conversation. And I think we'll get a lot better ideas and interaction with this thing being led from the interested Makerspace partners. So Mickey, did that all come across?
Yep, and people should be able to unmute themselves. Do you want me to stop screen or to stop screen
No, we can
share?
well, yeah, we can drop the screen share off right now.
Okay.
You want me to stop sharing?
Sure, if there's no more slides, and that way if people have questions and want to talk, let me just make sure that I actually left it so people can unmute themselves. Yep. So if anybody has any questions.
I'll jump in.
Hey, Sam.
For those that don't know me, my name is Sam Garson. I'm a science teacher and more lately a CTE STEM teacher for Friday Harbor High School. And I was really excited to be able to come to this today and really excited about what you guys are doing. I guess I'm just a little bit curious when you say makerspace, because I think that term gets thrown around a lot lately. What exactly are you envisioning? Like one of those community drop-in centers, shop space where you have 3D printers, CNC routers, or is it more fabrication, welding? Is the sky the limit? Whatever the need is will drive.
Yeah,
Makerspace.
yeah, we're more in that space. So right now we're the sky's the limit. If we can come up with a coalition of folks that can create a vision and come up with some plausible economic model to where it works, we could have a huge community workspace with high-tech gear, and maybe spawn entirely new industries, like building robotic sea sensors, or the sky's the limit on this. I would anticipate that there would probably some of that space would be individual folks that may want to do something low tech, like build fire, man-powered boats, build a fiberglass shell and do a CNC trim kit and sell those out the door like Port Townsend does, something like that. There could be, they're like in that upper level that has the atrium attached to it. I can see a commercial kitchen up there with chef training and using local foods, maybe in conjunction with some airport cold storage space connected to the food hub. There's a good partnership available there. So there's a ton of things, but really start thinking about the most audacious, amazing things, and we can dial back from there. But let's start big.
Okay. So one thing I'll mention is just my background. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Puget Sound Skills Center down in Highline School District. That's where I started teaching when I first came out to Washington. And Joe Weiss has built an amazing marine tech program down there. It's basically the gold standard for CTE education and marine tech in the state through a couple different partnerships with Coast Guard and the other. And it's something that, has been a lot of the reason I've moved more in CTE and trying to replicate what he's done down there. So he might be a good resource if we want to start looking at CTE partnerships. And that's one area where the state has pledged a lot of support and money. Liz Vivaro is our CTE director. And so one thing that maybe if anyone's interested, we do have a CTE advisory committee that might be a good tie-in with some of the planning that you're talking about, Todd, just because we do have, once we establish the programs, there is funding and support that would hopefully allow students to maybe access that space as well.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. And I am all for like slug. So in these like the community kitchens, if we end up with a brewery adjacent to this site, not within this site, but a brewery in conjunction with a brewing program opens up those additional funding sources. And so we're all about designing things around grants. You'll in this particular project, we ended up cobbling together through about 6 different grants, about 1.1 million in free money, and the remaining balance in a 25-year 2% curb loan. So this is, and the beauty of that is the way that we built the financial structure with all the grants is that we break even on this facility at around 30% occupancy, which lets us keep our entry cost to enterprising businesses much lower. So we've got space to be creative and take our time and chase grants and put together programs. It's not like we're going to be bleeding money because we have a 4% loan out at $2 million and no income coming in. So this is a long-term play, and I want it to be audacious. I mean, this is a heck of an opportunity. Sam, can you tell us what CTE stands for?
Yeah, so sorry, education loves our acronyms. So CTE is Career and Technical Education. It's what used to be called vocational, but that basically just got completely dragged through the mud in the 80s and 90s as like, that's where kids who aren't going to college come from. And they realized very quickly that that's not what the CTE and Career and Technical Education should be. So Washington State's really been at the forefront of this, so I'd say the last 10 years. And so it's our life skills classes. It's the idea is we're building pipelines from high school to employability, especially around in-demand job markets. And that's where the advisory committee really comes in, is trying to help us figure out what are the viable job markets in San Juan County. Where can we really try to provide businesses with, proper employees right out of high school that can really hopefully bolster the local economy, but also give students a real option of how to get employable high-wage jobs, because there are just so many of them, what used to be called the trades, that we can really try and support students with.
Yeah, and that in conjunction with some more high-tech stuff too, because there's several really successful business models of people doing, we have some real headwinds, there's no question. Anything that deals with a supply chain, where kind of low value add supply chain driven, those are tough markets for us. But you look at like the solar filters, and there's a ton of industries that are very technical that use a fairly low amount of materials, add a ton of value, and ship out in small packages. And we absolutely can compete in that space. We're doing it right now.
Well, and you mentioned the ocean sensor thing. So one thing I should probably email you, Todd, is there's a group called the Robert Murdoch Foundation. It's basically the foundation from the inventor of the EKG. And they support all kinds of small startup nonprofits and groups that are trying to impact STEM education. You mentioned the ocean sensor equipment, and there's a project at Friday Harbor Labs right now that I'm a part of for a 2-year grant with ocean sensing. And so there's definitely some overlap where people and locals could get skilled training in building underwater electronics, and then hopefully deploy that to a shallow water observatory that is now online there. And some of the skills that we're looking at the high school kids is, basic electronics, programming, coding, the Arduino movement and microprocessors, Raspberry Pi. There's a couple grants that we've gotten in. That's all, unfortunately, because of current circumstances, happening behind the scenes, but hopefully will yield some real fruit in the next 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, and that would be a great partnership to loop in the labs, because I think there's some real opportunity there. The other kind of natural partner in this might be the Salish Sea Science. They're kind of a semester school startup program. They're online right now, and they've done several successful semesters. using, excess space at the labs, excess space at Spring Street International. They're looking for a permanent home, and that seems to be, that could be right up their alley too, because their school is about, it's about science and ecology, but with an overlap to actual technical work, whether that be trades work or whether that be more high-end electronic sensor type things. But that's kind of their zone as well, and they're tied in well with the labs.
I should mention,
They've got some.
I'm the chair of the board for Salish Science.
Okay, so fantastic. So you know all about that tie-in.
Hey, Todd.
Yeah. So that go ahead.
This is Bex Bishop and Albert, and
Oh, hey, Bex, Albert.
And so one of the projects that I've been working on is a seaweed business, which is threefold. The ultimate goal is working on reforestation, but as well, the more consumer side is retail and food. And so just wanted to throw that in because it kind of wraps in there in wanting to provide educational information about the sea and seaweed, etc., and how that goes into it.
Yeah, and aquaculture is definitely an option in here. So, there's the facility would be, part of the facility would certainly be consistent with that. And then also as part of the rebuild of the marinas, the addition of some aquaculture or aquaculture infrastructure, processing type infrastructure. I know Salish Sea's interested in like a dive platform as part of that. So again, this is tons of white space right now. We have, it is in early design. Right now it's just big empty boxes. And so this is the time to start being creative and starting to put together, okay, if we had this type of program, how many square foot would it need? What type of infrastructure would it need? I've got some work to do on my end around the commercial kitchen part. But what I would need from this group is sort of a vision of what kind of power, what type of equipment or plumbing. I know it's a little bit early for that, but this building is going to be designed in the next few months and we'll start construction within a year. So we may not get it perfect, but if we can get the main stuff in, and I'll try to over design so that it allows for a ton of different opportunities, plumbing and electrical wise.
Hey,
but any idea on how much space that would take would be very handy at this stage in the game.
Hey, can I ask what's the I see the brewery there. What is,
Yep.
Is that committed by somebody, or is that?
No, nope, that is a potential. So it's equally likely that facility could be an aquaculture center, or it could be a kayak center, or it could be an expansion of Makerspace. So there's no commitments have been made. Now the downside of that building is that it is the building, the Marine Technical Center. We're in the process of removing that entire site from the MOTCA, the contaminated cleanup site, so we can just do what we need to do over there. The building, the old boat building that's going to be turned into something, and we don't know what yet. That one is ground zero contaminants. So that is highly contaminated, and we will absolutely have to work with Department of Ecology on we do it as an interim action. So we do a partial cleanup, and the cleanup would be baked into the construction of the building, which is fine. That's the right way to do these projects. And almost every part of the cleanup of the site will be in conjunction with some other project that, like, for example, when we build the road becomes we'll do some amount of contaminant removal, but the rest of it will cap with the road, and kind of the same with the building. So the short answer is there has been no commitments on what that building is, but it's probably, we'll do the land use permitting, kind of to allow a building to be built there from a land use standpoint. But as far as getting design and construction, we're probably 3 years, 4 years, kind of best case on clearing that, maybe faster, but we have to go through the same kind of vision, grant strategy, pull the funding package together, figure out the interaction and get that cleared by ecology, and then design and build. So that's a bit of a process, but it is potential future expansion space for the exact types of things that are going to go into the Marine Technical Center. And quite frankly, that would be my preference.
I'm also working on a distillery, by the way. So that's why I was curious about the.
Well, so that's the other thing. So one of the things that while it could be a brewery, what I would prefer is sort of a brewery, distillery, training center, much like Skagit has done.
Yeah.
And you can still have, it can be a nonprofit type of a structure, but you could have a profit component or an income component where you do have a serving room and you do have, sampling rooms, and that kind of pays for the training. So those sort of kind of that philanthropic or okay, I can't say that word, but anyway, that give money to people when they need it. That organization.
I like that idea. As I trained at Napa Valley College Winery, we had an on-site winery and vineyards that we were able to both have a business and a training facility.
And that has been such a successful model over the globe. Instead of like being in the begging zone forever, build it such that it is financially sustainable on its own through creating a product create a product, sell the product, use the proceeds to train and continue the program. So that type of model I'm intensely interested in.
Todd, this is Albert with Bex.
Hey, Albert.
How you doing? A quick question in terms of the approval process. So say, we have some backers that want to go with a distillery, brewery, kind of training, whatever. What type of approval process on your end? Does it have to go to the town, the county? What are you looking at?
No, so what we do in something like that, and that in fact, that model is the most likely model to get that project going. The Marine Technical Center was something that we really didn't anticipate being able to pull together in this manner. I don't think we can repeat that. A few years from now, we could take another run at it, but we've kind of tapped everybody that's willing to be tapped right now. So that brewery or the distillery brewery training thing, that would absolutely be a public-private partnership where you'd work directly with the port. It wouldn't have anything to do with the town or the county, at least at this stage. And we'd draw up an MOU and start working on, okay, what does the building look like? What does the infrastructure look like? What's the program look like? What financial commitments are going to be made by the port and by the private investor? And we just start working out those details as part of an MOU. It's non-binding, but it does give us space to hold other people at bay while we work out the details.
Right. So in other words, you're saying that in terms to other communities and locations, this can be done relatively quickly if we have our set of investors on our end ready to go.
Yeah, truthfully, this could be done. I mean, there's no particular reason why this couldn't be done within a year or two after the Marine Technical Center with a private partner. Because the regulatory hurdles are manageable. They're complex, but they're manageable. The harder part of this is the funding piece, always.
Yeah, so I came in a little late, about 10 minutes after you started discussing the building. What's the square footage on that space?
Let me share my screen again.
Yeah, I only came in with the picture and I didn't really get much of the details.
So this lower space down here is about 8,000 square feet, 12-foot ceilings. This upper space is going to be about 3,500 square feet with we'll probably pop this structure up to do a mezzanine above that and get another 2,000 square feet up here. This is going to be about 15, well, maybe a 2,000-ish, 1,500, 2,000 foot atrium, probably fully enclosed.
Okay, and one other stupid question is, what is the location? I'm sorry, I just, all those details I missed. This is over down by the port, right?
Correct. So this is, so if you're down, let's see, sorry about
Okay,
that.
Jensen's got it.
Okay, so at Jensen, see the old boat shed here?
Yeah.
The boathouses, it's in this field adjacent to it.
Oh, nice, perfect
This
spot.
field right here. See, it's beautiful. It's gonna be a gorgeous spot.
Yeah.
So so back to C here. Okay, so this building, the public, what would almost certainly have to be in the near term a public-private venture. This footprint is about 2,500 square feet. And there's probably another 2,500 square feet available behind it. So this could be a fairly substantial building, and that's on the first floor. We could go 2 stories and probably get, my estimate is easily we could get 7,500. 10 to 12,000 will be pushing the boundaries of what we've got to work with.
And in terms of how this business structure would work, would it be a lease on the space? How would that work? I didn't get any of that.
Yeah, so it would be a ground lease basically.
Got it.
And depending on how much the port needed to put into the development, then that would get baked into kind of an ROI type situation. So we'd have to look at that, but ideally it would be a land lease.
Right. And just to get the full picture, so say like I had some private investors, but they don't want to do training or anything. They just want to put in a distillery and make it a complete private operation. Is that something that the port was looking at, or they more want kind of what you're talking about, an education center kind of place?
Yeah, because this space could be rented just out of the box for a distillery or a brewery. And I already know that there's folks interested in that. In some fashion, I would like that model to include some sort of training program, even if it was as simple as a commitment to an apprenticeship type thing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the 4 corners of what this looks like.
Right. So it would be just, I think that from a commission and port staff perspective, some hat tip towards apprenticeship or training would be a highly compelling component.
Right. So basically a ground lease, and then we build the structure with our private funding and maybe some contribution from the port, or just all private funding. Probably
all private funding, unless we were to tap, if we did it as a joint project, it would be the port's contribution would be on the grant side. So we'd gather up, as much money and low interest loans and other things, and we'd put in some of the infrastructure, and then the TI or some, we'd have to figure out the slice. But that would be if it was a public-private, we would be pursuing it from the grant angle for the most part. And so it would have to have a significantly higher training component.
And in terms of the length of the ground lease, is there any sort of things you're looking at, 25 years? And
typically, we're willing to go like 25 years initial term, and then extensions out to about 49 years total.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Well,
and then because we're a public entity, the way that these leases work is, if you're dealing with a private entity and there's a good building left at the end of the lease, they take the building and sell it at a windfall. The port does not do that because we are interested in the leasing business, and we want people to walk into leases with a high degree of confidence, or be able to, so we will renegotiate if it gets to a situation where we're getting close to the end of a lease and it's like, hey, we've got 30, 40 years left in this structure, we'd like to renegotiate. The port always renegotiates the leases.
Got it.
So wanted to see if we could bring the conversation back to the makerspace side a little bit. I was wondering, like, do you have plans for how you're going to figure out what form of makerspace you're going to be using? And
So what we're going to do is here, once I get some better artist renderings and we kind of finalize the footprint of the building, which would be in the next, like within the month, then I was going to do a press release and probably an op-ed and get this information out to the community broadly and solicit proposals for the makerspace. And out of those proposals, and if out of this group, we get proposals that are ahead of that, that's great. Or we start conversations about, so anybody that's interested in some portion of this building or some idea, we should get together and start sending sketches back and forth and laying out program details. This is the time, because we've got 1.5 to 2 years while we're putting this facility together. And it'd be nice if we had a fully baked program that stepped in the day that this thing opens its doors.
Related to that, this may be a little bit out of the port's bailiwick, but have you thought about how this facility might be tapped into by people on the other islands?
Not so much in this space, very much so in like the cold storage kind of airport project that we're going to be starting. And that may feed into the upper floor, maybe the lower floor of this facility. So to that extent, yes. How this would relate to other maker spaces or programs on other islands, I don't have a good picture in my head of how that would work.
So one of the things I've been thinking about is, like, it seemed at their first meeting that there might be some sort of there were a bunch of different sort of areas which brought people interested in maker spaces. If, like, maybe one could have different facilities that had sort of different specializations that people could.
Are there other partners? Are there other partners on the other islands that are kind of doing something similar to this?
I have not heard of something similar to what you're doing on those.
Yeah, I think Port of Orcas and Port of Lopez, this would something, even a tiny version of this would be a substantial lift and not really where they've been. That would be a new leaf for them. Not that they couldn't or shouldn't do it. And there's some interest among the commissions to do this kind of thing, but it would be new for them.
I think I had heard either the Port of the Chamber and Orcas had been interested in something like this, but that was sort of a very informal thing, and I don't remember. It might have been a totally different organization. So, did people have other questions for Todd, or do people want to go into breakout rooms so people could talk in smaller groups and get to know each other a little bit?
I've got a question for you there, Todd. This is Ryan Palmatier.
Yeah, I know you, Brian.
This is awesome. This is the first real step towards a big change in sort of the San Juan County economic paradigm. One thing I do have a question about is this already piped in for fiber optic internet?
Yes. So
Excellent.
Yeah, that's critical. So power, sewer, water, internet, solar, and it's kind of hitting all the right pieces. And just as an aside, unrelated to this, we're related to this, the mission behind this project. We just won a 20-year battle with the FAA and ended up carving out about 50 acres of industrial park space that wraps around the backside and the south side of the airport. So we are currently offering large chunks of land for lease, and we're getting a lot of interest in in existing kind of new businesses and existing business expansion. But if there was someone from a different island or other people on this island that are interested in Makerspace, but it's not necessarily marine related, we have a ton of other land available that would be appropriate for the non-marine related activities like this. And we're also working with, we're trying to put together a private-public partnership between a builder and the college to see if we can't come up with dormitory housing, which would open up a ton of opportunities for new programs that would totally work here if you could house students. We know that. We've seen that over and over and over. But if you don't have any place to stay, you can't bring kids here and young adults here. And so that could be a game changer for the college and the community. That's kind of in its initial stages, but that's something else that we're working on.
I have to say, Albert and I are both on the board for Wolf Hollow Wildlife, and we have that same problem with trying to bring in all these interns, but where to house them. So that's definitely an acknowledged problem, and we want to bring in more training facilities. But to that note, just a long shot here, but so I missed, forgive me for not being at the beginning, but do you have like retail space that you plan to have any kind of like Wolf Hollow? We're looking at building an educational center since we can't bring people onto the property, as the whole point is to rehabilitate the animals and get them out to the wild without interacting with humans. But we still want to educate people about it. Would there be like a possible space that we could have a little educational room or kiosk?
Yeah, actually, because Wolf Hollow does a lot of marine animals. So
Yeah,
there's going to be,
we just
so
really feels.
yeah, absolutely. So in this building here, there's going to be a ton of office space and other things that are available. And so this would be a perfect location for a little office that off of the entry. So that would be a perfect fit for what we're imagining in here.
Oh, that's great.
I think I'd probably avoid the lower level that's kind of intended to be the more industrial space. But this is kind of that really attractive walk-in, big spaces, kind of nice look for an office.
Todd, I have one. This is Albert. I just have one last question, kind of another
Sure.
dumb question, since I'm just jumping into this without a lot of background. Makerspace. So can you just give me a quick definition of the big picture when you use the term makerspace?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things, and ideally it would be a combination. So part of the makerspace could be community shops. It could be a community shop in conjunction with STEM, the high school STEM program, where you're doing a combination of trades and high-end electrical or electronics training and manufacturing, potentially even sales, even out of that program to feed back into the funding of the program. That would be one component. I would anticipate some other components that are purely a single private entity creating boat kits or boat part kits or repair type services. So, some maybe aquaculture processing, any number of different types of either public spaces that are more training related, and then together with kind of filling in the gaps with folks that are actually purely private, purely for profit. I'm gonna repair or make something, and I'm gonna do it out of this facility.
Got it. That's helpful.
So more broadly, there's lots of different kinds of maker spaces and related ideas like community labs and fab labs and stuff. And some of them are, and they're all typically you have groups of people who are working together and sharing tools and sharing skills in some form or other. And the particular model varies quite a bit. Some of them are more focused on things like traditional materials. Some are more on high-tech stuff. So there are lots of different things. So for example, there was a little, a group I just found out about this week had just opened up a shared carpentry shop space on this island. So that would fit within the sort of idea of a makerspace, that they're focused on really particular, more traditional materials, whereas other places are really more in lines with like 3D printers and high-tech stuff. So there are a lot of, there's not really, there are sort of a lot of different models that are really closely related in these sort of community.
Yeah. And the driver is going to be the interest. So it'll be the big driver of what it ends up looking like will be some combination of what comes out of this group on sort of more the public collaboration and even some private concerns potentially. And then when we go broadly and do our public announcement and start soliciting interest, depending on who comes forward, that ultimately, hopefully the problem is we have more takers than we have space, and we take the highest and best kind of use of the facility, and then we start working on facility number 2 to serve the need that we can't serve out of this one.
Facility number 2 being, are you talking the airport facility?
It would be the facility 2 would, well, 2 and 3. One would be the boat shed building, the one's labeled Future Brewery, and then potentially a different one up at the airport that serves sort of it'd be that more conventional combination of public and private makerspace that is not marine related.
Right. And you mentioned a commercial kitchen potentially.
Yeah, I'm picturing a commercial kitchen. So if this upper story goes to a full story with a 2,000-foot mezzanine, we maybe have some office spaces up here or on the back. But in this facility, because this atrium is going to be, the combination of the interior spaces and the atrium makes this kind of ideal for a really cool event space. And so if we put a commercial kitchen in here and did a combination of rented out for event spaces and ran a program for culinary arts or manufacturing value add products from locally produced island products, that's a great fit in here.
No, okay, that was you kind of answered it. I was just gonna ask, so the commercial kitchen could be rented out by individuals or groups, but it would also be able to be built in such a capacity that you could do culinary teaching and presentations. And
absolutely
events.
Yeah, that's the vision. That vision's only about a day and a half old, so it's not fully formed, but it's getting there.
And then in addition to that, do you envision, so that would be event space for food purpose, which could make it also not necessary to have the food, but do you envision space for like conference rental, event
Yes.
rental, or would it be that space that you're thinking of?
So that would be kind of serve all of those needs, whether they make the food here or cater it, but they could rent it for an event, a conference, any number of things. And in the kind of the empty periods, like, kind of that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, those are kind of the big event type things. Mm-hmm. The classes could be more of a Monday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday type of a deal. So that's, that's pretty far down into the details. There's also the very real possibility that the majority of this entire building could end up being Salish Sciences, and then they would probably, and I don't know what that would do to this space. That would kind of
outdoor space I'm seeing.
Is that outdoor atrium. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And so if this were to be primarily a Salish Sea type facility, we'd probably cordon off a portion of it to make at least the kitchen and a dining room and an atrium space. So it's I find with the atrium, it seems somewhat unlikely that this entire building would be absorbed by, say, let's see, it'd probably be a portion of this building with maybe some classrooms and labs down in the lower area.
So Todd, is this event going to be every Friday, or is this a one-time thing? Just wanted to get clear on that.
Well, this conversation is kind of a one-time thing, but I was hoping to join these on a pretty routine basis because I think that there's a lot of more thought that will go into this. I think it's in some ways, I think kind of a periodic check-in would be better, like maybe monthly. I think the bulk of the work on this is going to be done by sort of a smaller groups of individuals sitting down with masked up and laying out some paper on the table and sort of sketching out, here's a layout and here's a program. So I think that the real progress is going to be sort of in between the meetings.
Right. Yeah, I have an interest in obviously this space, but also in the airport as well.
Yeah. And there's a ton of new airport airplane hangar construction in the wings right now. But again, there's additional space, especially in the non-hangar space. We've got a ton to work with. In the hangar space, we're kind of, as far as construction goes, there's individuals already working on all of the available spots.
So I want
But
to
we are
interrupt.
looking, go ahead.
Sorry. I wanted to interrupt and make sure we have a chance to break out into smaller groups. So related to what Albert was talking about, as a separate, this event put on by the EDs, this talk, and we were thinking about continuing and having groups on different islands who are doing different things related to makerspaces come back also monthly and talk about what they're doing. So for example, I was talking to Sam about giving a talk in December about what they do at the STEM Center and how that might relate to the community. And they're obviously more from the educational side. But so that would be a sort of a different set of events than with the Todd and the port. If you guys don't mind, I would like to break people into smaller groups so that people could have a little bit more one-on-one time, and I can put you guys into the same breakout room so that you can sort of keep going on your about the specific options of port spaces, if that's okay with you. That sound good, Albert? Did you lose Todd?
I was on mute. That sounds fine. I'm trying to decide whether at this point whether it makes any sense for me to be in a breakup group since I'm still kind of in the early stages of figuring this all out and the direction.
Albert, why don't you give me a call? And because your stuff is really kind of me and you kind of stuff
Okay.
at this point.
Okay.
That works.
Well, I'll create those rooms and then hopefully we can, because I'd like to get some conversations going that will sort of build this across the whole community and the whole archipelago.